Staying overseas, Syria's main opposition group has followed through on its threat to suspend involvement in peace talks, as Syrian government airstrikes have killed around 50 people and wounded scores more in rebel areas of the country. These are the worst attacks yet since a ceasefire was announced in February, and they've come days after the peace talks began. Anne Barker has our report.
The airstrikes hit two separate markets in Idlib province around lunchtime. Most of the dead were killed when a bomb destroyed a busy vegetable market at Marat al-Numan. Amateur vision showed the devastation and carnage. In the chaos that followed, shoppers and storekeepers scrambled to carry the injured to care. Almost simultaneously, another bomb struck a market at Kafr Nubel, killing around 10 people. While further south in Homs province, two more rebel-held areas were struck. Rebel groups claimed barrel bombs and thermobaric bombs, which suck the oxygen from the surroundings, were used to maximise the devastation. It's not certain who carried out the attacks, but both opposition groups and the US blame the Syrian regime. US State Department spokesman John Kirby.
It was most likely regime forces, but information's still coming in. So I want to be a little careful here on how I couch that. And it has been, as we've said, by and large, the majority of the violations have been by the regime.
These were the deadliest attacks yet since a fragile truce began 7 weeks ago between the many warring parties. Syria's opposition was already threatening to withdraw from peace talks, which resumed only this week in Geneva. Now the escalation in violence has put the peace process on the edge of collapse. Riyad Hijab heads the Syrian opposition's negotiating team.
We will not accept any negotiations here in Geneva while our people are dying of hunger and of bombardment. We cannot be a part of a process that will change the rights of our people and increase their suffering.
Riyad Hijab says opposition negotiators are now suspending their involvement in the talks unless or until the truce is restored, and they insist there can be no solution while Bashar al-Assad remains in power.
Bashar al-Assad will not remain and we will not forgive. Bashar al-Assad must face justice. He must be punished. He will not escape punishment.
The White House has supported calls for President Assad's removal in the transition to a new Syrian government. But the Syrian leader's representative in Geneva, Bashar al-Jafari, says Assad's future is not even on the negotiating table.
It will happen in Syria by the Syrian people. It's not the business of anybody in Geneva. It happens when the Syrian people decide. It's a Syrian matter.
It's impossible to see how these peace talks, if they do resume, can move forward, let alone produce any agreement to end the 5-year civil war. But the US remains optimistic. A White House spokesman, Josh Earnest.
There still is a framework in place, and I believe that there are still technical discussions that are taking place in Geneva even as we speak. So there still is a path forward here. It's understandable that there is a frustration on the part of the opposition when we see repeated violations of the cessation of hostilities.
The big fear now is a collapse in the peace process, and an end to the truce would amount to a green light for the airstrikes to escalate.
Anne Barker reporting.